So today we're writing linear equations. This is different than what we did as a warm-up when we had something where it doubles or a percent. When it has a percent or it doubles, then that's when we're usually talking about exponential. Alright? And these problems, there's going to be a constant rate of change. So each time it's changing by the same amount. Alright? And that's your slope. Okay? And then we multiply this by each time it happens. Okay, Laya? And then there's also a beginning amount, something that does not change, which is kind of the same thing as a constant and does not change. Alright? And that's your y-intercept. So let's look at one of the examples that we have. So, back to the first example. Jonathan's birthday costs $5. Okay? Plus additional $1 for each guest he invites. It's kind of a very cheap party, right? It doesn't cost a lot. So, write an equation to show the relationship between the guest, x, and the cost, y. So, okay, can you have a seat, please?
No, ya me puedo sentar.
Yes, thank you. Now, so, here's what you're doing. Can you have a seat, Miguel? So now, here's what you're doing. In this problem, it gives you a couple things. Do you see that? First thing it gives you the letters. Okay? In this, can you give me one of the letters, Tamina, in this problem? Yeah, x and y, right? Those are the variables. So we're going to put number 1, x and y. Okay? So, for this problem, x are the number of guests. It tells me that in the problem. It tells me x are the number of guests. Okay? So, number of guests. If there's 3 guests, x equals 3. If there's 4 guests, then x equals 4. Alright? Now, what does the y stand for? Y stands for the cost. Okay? Y stands for the cost. So, does the number of guests depend on the cost, or does the cost depend on the number of guests? Yeah, the cost depends on how many guests you have, right, Alejandra? So it'd be y equals. Okay, it says the party costs $5. All right. Now I'm gonna put 5. Now, is it 5 per each guest, or is it 5 for the whole party? For the whole party. So we just put 5, and in the problem it says plus an additional $1. So plus, is it just plus $1 though? No, it's $1 for each guest. What do we use to show the guests, the number of guests? X. So it's 1 times the x. Okay? And that's your equation. That's your equation. Okay? So 5 is the constant, the beginning. Okay? It's what costs at the beginning, no matter what. And $1 per guest. If there's this x is going to change depending on how many guests there are, but this is each time that we have a guest, it's another $1. Does that make sense to everybody? That's what the slope is. Okay? The x is changing depending on the number, but the slope, each time you have another guest, it's another $1. All right? So, we're going to talk about number 2 and number 3 you're doing independently. So, on number 2, you do not have to copy number 2. Let's read it. Paco cycles 2 kilometers during each trip to work. Write an equation that shows the relationship between the number of trips to work and the total distance cycled. So, we have 2 letters. Can you give me one of them, Alejandra? The 2 letters in this problem? X and Y. Thank you. Alright, so what does X stand for? Quinty? Number of trips. Okay? What about the y, Magdalena? What does the y stand for?
But the whole.
No, there's no cost in this one. It says right here.
But the whole.
It says right there. Total distance. So, do you understand that he's riding a bike, right?
Yeah.
And each time he goes to work, each trip, how many miles does he do, kilometers does he do each trip? 2. Not 2 total, 2 each trip. Okay? So, does the total distance that he is on his bike, does it depend on the number of trips, or does the number of trips depend on the distance?
It depends.
The distance depends on the number of trips. Do you see how x is the one that keeps changing? Do you see that? X is the number of trips. X is the number of guests.
Yes.
X is the number of pencils. It's the one that can change to be 0, 10, 20. Alright? Now, because y is the one that's dependent, you put y equals. Y equals. Now, in the problem, it tells me it's 2 kilometers during each trip. So I put 2. But is my answer 2 every single time? 2 is the only distance he travels? No. It would be 2, and then what's after that? X. Because it's 2 for each trip, and trip stands for X. Okay? Each trip is for X. So now you're going to do one independently on your own.
My equation 2x.
Yep. And is there a constant? Is there a beginning in this problem?
No.
Did it give me something else to figure out? No. It's just 2 per trip. That's it. Got it, Alejandra? You're over there shooting people with your fake gun.
Alright. My x is number of.
How did I get that? Because it tells me right here. Number of trips, X. That's where I got that from. It tells you in the problem.
Oh yeah.
Got it? Alright. Okay. You can work on your homework. Alright. So, now you're doing this one independently, and you're going to show me once you're done. Alright? You're going to do this one independently and show me when you're done.